achieved.
So let's be honest. We all know Jeremy Stephens wanted out of that fight. It was going south quickly. And as a result, he took the first opportunity he could to waste the last 6 weeks of his life and a substantial amount of money to pull out of a fight he was preparing for. Because we know over Jeremy Stephens' career, that's exactly what he has done time and time again. The guy's a quitter. Obviously, I'm being sarcastic. Very unfortunate end to UFC Fight Night 159 with Jeremy Stephens suffering the eye poke when a doctor is unable to pry your eye open because it's spasming so much and so badly injured because of an eye poke, an unfortunate, unintentional eye poke. It's very evident that he just couldn't continue. You could almost tell right away. Herb did a fantastic job attempting to prolong situations, but it's not magically going to open. That fight was done. You can't expect a guy to go a full 25 minutes with a compromised eye that early in the fight. And it's just the Mexican crowd. I get it. They're passionate. They want to see this fight. They're looking forward to it. They didn't have a heck of a lot of success. When you look at Alexa Grasso losing, Martin Bravo losing, who else lost on the night? Marco Polo Reyes. They didn't have a whole lot of success throughout the night. Jose Quinones and Irina Aldana did get victories for them. But anyway, they wanted that fight, and it didn't happen. They threw stuff in the ring, which is never acceptable because you can hurt people who unintentionally. It's just too bad. But again, Yair Rodriguez got to have a little bit better control. Looked like a little bit of a spoiled brat in the cage, flipping out the way he was. Jeremy Stephens, again, he's not the type of guy who's going to try and look for an easy way out, especially 15 seconds in. Maybe you have more of a case if he's down 3 rounds to none and getting absolutely blasted, but not to the point where he can get himself out of there. Then you go, okay, maybe he was looking for a way out. But even that doesn't sound like Jeremy Stephens. Very unfortunate nonetheless. The backstage altercation, the way Yair Rodriguez carried himself in the cage, it actually creates a great aura around this fight. And now you can take this fight and slap it on a pay-per-view when Jeremy's back and ready to go, or as a co-main event of a fight night, and you've got yourself a pretty good fight steeped in some background, some history, and I very much look forward to seeing how it plays out. Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and on this episode of the show, we are breaking down the upcoming UFC Fight Night 160 event, which will transpire on September 28th. I believe it's a 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time start, so again, set your clocks. Do not miss that one. It's going down in Copenhagen, Denmark, from the Royal Arena, the first time the UFC's been to Denmark, and will feature a number of their fighters on the main card in the prelims, including Jack Hermansson, who is a Scandinavian-based fighter, taking on Jared Cannonier in the main event. All of my main card predictions will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. All of my main card predictions are available on this episode of the show. All of my preliminary picks are available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. I apologize. It's very early in the morning here. I came to my classroom to get an opportunity to shoot this video. I'm a little bit late getting it out. Why I'm up so early and why I'm in my classroom this early is... if you're listening and you know why, you know why. If you don't, well, it doesn't really matter then. I am coming off a very solid showing. Back-to-back solid showings. At UFC at Fight Night 158, I went 9-2, and we cashed massively. And you can see that on my main page with my bet packs. We took home... Sorry, it's just loading up here. I forgot to load it up. Yeah, it's irresponsible on my part. All my gold plays cashed. The profit for the HBC was 54.6 units. The profit for the CBC, the casual betting cluster, so for people who don't have as much money on the line and want to have a little more fun, 126.99 units. Now, we followed that up at UFC Fight Night 159, again, with all of my gold plays cashing. My HBC profit, 47.19 units. Again, this is profit, take home after you've done all your betting. My CBC profit, 24.98 units. So again, back-to-back solid showings. Again, those picks plus links to the bet packs and my top dog and favorite picks all available on the main page of my website. You can check that out. And if you go back and you look through, obviously Jeremy Stephens, that was a voided bet, which came off the books. The one, Brandon Moreno was a voided bet coming off the books as well because of the draw, which I felt he possibly could have got the win. Martin Bravo was the one upset, or the one loss that kind of hurt me. He did kill a wild card parlay in my HBC, which would have been a huge cash in. Claudio Poulos not getting a submission in his fight in the opening fight of the night also killed a parlay, which was kind of, again, a wild card parlay. Either way, the bet packs will be for sale for $15. They are rolling right now. They're getting hot, and this is the time to get in on them. Again, I can't promise. I put the work in. I break things down. I was a little more conservative the last 2 shows, and it paid off significantly, but I can't promise you I'll do it again. All I can promise you is I'll put the work in. $15 though. How can you go wrong there? You get an insight for every single fight on the main card and the prelims. I give you fantasy information, or you can subscribe, which usually gets you to the end of October and will save you $10-15 along the way. You'll see that available in the bet shop as well, so please check that out. I don't want to be one of these people who you message me and like, oh, I missed the heat wave, I missed the streak, we missed the 3 or 4 shows in a row where you cashed in huge, and then I jumped in at the wrong time. I jumped in at the time where we were down. It happens. It's ups and downs. If mixed martial arts predicting and betting was easy, everyone would do it. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at KO_predictions. Please fire that up. You can follow me on Facebook. Subscribe to my YouTube videos. That's always nice. We're closing in on 3,000 followers, which is pretty cool. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I've missed. I don't think so. Won a ball tournament on the weekend. I think that's pretty awesome. I went yard twice. That's a good weekend. Beat a friend of mine's team, which was a lot of fun. Really look forward to that game. Yeah, there was definitely a lot of good vibes going on the ball diamond. Yeah, for those of us who played. On that note, let's get to our first main card prediction. We open things up in the UFC's welterweight division with a returning Nicolas sharpshooter Dalby, 14-2-1. Little homage to Bret Hart, at least from me. I don't know from him. A Danish-born fighter, Danish-based fighter, so making his return, taking on the always entertaining and exciting Brazilian Alex Cowboy Oliveira with a current record of 19 wins, 6 losses, 1 draw, and 2 no contests. Now, Dalby went 1-2-1 during his first UFC run. All very entertaining fights for the most part. He opened with a split decision win over Alessio's Oleksiejczuk dos Santos, which was very impressive. He followed that up with a loss to Carlo Pedersoli he followed that up with a slow stretch, downward turn in some very tight fights, close fights. Fought Darren Till to a draw. Got cut, lost to Carlo Pedersoli on the regional scene by split decision. He has won 3 in a row since, all in Cage Warriors. His most recent fight was a no contest, which we'll talk about later on, which was absolutely wild. He did capture the Cage Warriors interim welterweight title in the meantime as well. Now for Oliveira, he's lost back-to-back bouts. He's an action fighter, and he's got in there with some pretty good fighters himself and just came up on the wrong end of it. He lost to Mike Perry, and he lost to Gunnar Nelson in those 2 defeats. After he did have a 6-1 stretch that also included a no contest that he eventually got avenged against Tim Means. And in that stretch, again, beat Tim Means, beat Carlos Condit, beat Ryan LaFleur, beat Will Brooks. Now, all those guys have kind of seemed to be on a bit of a downturn, or at least have had some struggles, which is worth noting. He also owns a TKO victory over the aforementioned Pedersoli. It took him just 39 seconds to get him out of there. Physically, both guys 5'11", 2-inch reach advantage for Oliveira, also 4 years younger than Dalby. And keep in mind, Oliveira tends to be, he's a big man. He used to fight at lightweight, and he's kind of stuck in one of those spots where, he might not be the biggest welterweight. He's too big for lightweight. He still cuts a lot of weight. There's just something weird about his physical makeup. Now, Dalby fighting at home is massive. He is 13-0 in Denmark. He has never lost fighting at home. He fought there earlier this year for the first time since 2014, which is probably a good thing. He got some of those jitters out, at least fighting at home in front of the hometown crowd, and now he gets to fight in the UFC, which will have some added jitters, but it's not going to have the impact you might initially think it has. Now, it's worth noting he's talked about in the media. He had some various issues outside the cage with alcoholism and depression after he was released from the UFC, and he's battled through that, and that puts a lot more pressure on him because he realizes this is probably his last opportunity. And yes, he's put some exciting fights together. He might not be getting this shot if it wasn't in Denmark. I like Nicolas Dalby, but let's be honest, this is a big factor here is that they're fighting in his home country. Now, during Dalby's first run, he struggled to match the striking output of his opponents, usually utilizing takedowns to help counter it. And as I said, he started 1-0-1. He landed 8 takedowns in those 2 fights. Then he went 0-2 where he landed no takedowns and gave up 4. So you kind of see that swing, that switch. Now, when he left the UFC, when he came to the UFC, when he left the UFC, my apologies, he had 7 wins by decision, just 3 wins by knockout, just 3 wins by submission. So not exactly the type of guy who's blowing the doors off opponents, kind of grinding his way to victories and just outworking them. But since he's shown himself to be a bit of a fighter, he's finished a bit of finishers, finished 2 by knockout and 1 by submission. That's definitely something maybe as an older fighter, but he's still rounding out his game. Now, in his recent fights, he stays very active on the outside of the cage early, utilizing that jab and a lot of kicks and just bouncing around and just peppering away at his opponent. But then as the fight progresses, he likes to transition to a clinch-based attack. Move in, control, set up takedowns, kind of take over as the opponent slows down and force them to work harder as they're more tired. That's a very effective strategy if you can make it work. In his last fight, he was utilizing a lot of clinch and trips, working in top position, having a lot of success from that position. Now, the last fight we talked about was a unification bout for the Cage Warriors welterweight title. That fight ended in a no contest because it was so fucking bloody. And go check it out. It's on the UFC. It's on UFC Fight Pass. It was so bloody, and both fighters were cut wide open. Dalby first, his opponent second. I think his nose broke. Just the blood is everywhere. The mat became too slippy to continue. Neither guy could gain traction, and once they hit the ground, it was almost like a slip and slide trying to get back up to their feet. Mark Goddard was the referee. He called the action. I think it was the third or fourth round, and said, we can't continue. The integrity of this fight has gone out the window because of the conditions. Very good fight. Back and forth, a little sloppy, but still awesome fight to watch. And, it's too bad they couldn't finish that out in rematch, but also ultimately Dalby getting an opportunity to come back to the UFC. Now, Oliveira, he is a clinch grappling heavy fighter. Yes, he can strike. And he's pretty good at it. He's got some power. He pushes forward, but he likes to get in on his opponent's legs, either take them down or pin them on the cage and hold them there and simply break them down. He was super aggressive against Mike Perry early, which is an interesting way to approach Perry because Perry tends to be very aggressive as well. He was winging big shots and then, again, clinching up along the wall and trying to control him. He got in some big exchange with Mike Perry. He got dropped in round 2 because he was overextending. He spent some time on his back, and he just had that little bit of a slowdown, and that seems to be an issue. Same thing, he had a great start against Gunnar Nelson, and then he slowed down, got his lack of defensive awareness was capitalized on, and he lost the fight as a result. Oliveira offers a little bit of everything, and that's one thing that makes him fun. And included in that everything is just chaos. And Perry was able to counter that and have success. And it's a good question. Can Dalby do the same? Dalby's a more linear fighter. He's not as impactful as Oliveira, but he's more technical as far as I'm concerned. This seems like one of those fights that if it was going down in Brazil, Oliveira is your huge favorite coming into this matchup, or at least a sizable favorite who should walk away from this. Even if it goes down to the States, I would favor Oliveira. But I feel like the home field advantage is massive for Dalby. And him being so aggressive, Oliveira being so aggressive, it's going to open up holes for Dalby to both capitalize on from a defensive perspective and from a cardio perspective. I think Dalby's going to be motivated to be back in the UFC and fighting at home. This is a huge opportunity for him. I think he's put on one of his best performances to date, just be very sharp and focused. He's going to utilize that decent striking output that's going to be more consistent. Oliveira might win the opening round, but if Dalby can capitalize and stay close, make him work hard, look for Dalby to start taking advantage of Oliveira pushing down Dalby. He'll get on top at a couple points and kind of start wearing him out, land some strikes, keep landing volume, and just edge this fight out. Might include a hometown decision, but my prediction is Nicolas Dalby to defeat Alex Oliveira by decision. Up next, we're in the UFC's light heavyweight division as Poland's Michal Oleksiejczuk, I'm probably butchering that, I know it's close, 13-2-0 with 1 no contest, takes on the always present veteran, former Strikeforce veteran, former interim title challenger, Ovince Preux, affectionately known as OSP, currently holding a record of 23 wins and 12 defeats. Now, OSP is in a tough spot here, but he's been here before. Let's keep that in mind. He has lost 2 in a row and 3 of 4. He almost lost all 4, but was able to rally back and get a victory against Tyson Pedro. Now, he has lost 3 of 4 before, and then went on a 3-fight winning streak. So he knows how to rally, he knows how to get to these spots, but still, it's a big, important fight for him. For Oleksiejczuk, he's 2-0 in the UFC. In addition to that, he had a win-turn-no contest. He's undefeated in his last 12. Decision victory for Khalil Rountree, which was a win-turn-no contest. Then he knocks out Gian Vellante and Gazmat Antigulov in a very impressive fashion. Physically, OSP 3 inches taller with a 6-inch reach advantage, but he is 12 years older than Michal. Now, Oleksiejczuk, he has fought twice in 2019 after he had a prolonged layoff dating back to 2017, so he's been more active of late. I believe he had some issues there with, we won't get into it, but either way. Now, it's worth noting, in those 2 wins, a total of 2 minutes and 18 seconds, with both fights ending via knockout. Overall, he has 10 wins by knockout, 1 submission victory. He's 3-0 in the scorecards with 7 first-round wins. But he is technically 8-0, including that no contest against Rountree, after the first round, which includes 4 finishes. He has very good cardio, he stays active, and he keeps pushing his opponent very effectively. His footwork and his striking is very strong. Now, you will take some damage in the process, but he's shown in recent fights, too, he can dish it out a big way and make that exchange not worth his opponent's while. Versus Antigulov, he was landing some beautiful counter strikes, hurting him every time he pushed forward and really impacting him. And that's ultimately what led to the finish. Now, his striking tends to be a little bit loose, but it's more so we're just used to seeing guys at light heavyweight muscling and throwing stiff shots, looking to knock your head off every time. Where Michal is he's very fluid with his offense. His footwork's good, his hands are good, and he's just there picking away at you. And it's why he can do what he can do and other guys can't, as he can push you into the later rounds and still keep engaging you like that if you're able to survive the early stages. He stays active, pushes the pace, doesn't wear himself out, and you start to fade. Now, OSP is a veteran fighter who has faced top-level competition, but he's absolutely flawed. The number one area of concern with St. Preux is his cardio. He tends to have just one round, maybe a round and a half of cardio in him if he is pushed before he starts to slow down significantly. He is 2-5 in his last 7 fights to go beyond the first round. He went 5 rounds with John Jones, in a fight that a lot of people criticize Jones for. But he has been finished multiple times in the later stages of fights. Now, he did rally against Corey Anderson. I had Anderson in that matchup, so that kind of sucked to watch. He defeated Anderson in round 3 of a fight he was losing, knocking him out. OSP is a physically gifted fighter. There's no denying that. He hits very hard. He has a strong grappling attack, but he seems to lack fluidity between his offensive techniques. It's one or this, and it's never cohesive. But you have to ask yourself, how does a veteran fighter like this win this fight? If he can take Oleksiejczuk down early, take him down to the mat, he can set up a sub attempt. He hits very hard. He's got some stiff strikes, and if Michal walks into it, he could absolutely knock him out. But both those scenarios are problematic and kind of isolated. They have to, it's like lightning in a bottle. OSP needs to get off to a good start here to avoid getting run over by Oleksiejczuk, but at the same time, he can't be a victim of his own success. He can't get off to too strong a start where he exhausts himself pushing and then, boom, fades in rounds 2 and 3, which is something Oleksiejczuk has done to other opponents outside of the UFC. The window for victory for OSP is minimal. But this is a step up for Michal, that's no question about it, but I think he's ready for it. Oleksiejczuk can win with an early stoppage, as OSP's chin is far from perfect. More likely, those Oleksiejczuk pushes him early, takes over this fight as it advances. OSP starts to slow, starts to position himself on the cage, starts to stiffen up, stand straight up and down, and Oleksiejczuk eventually swarms him. And my prediction is Michal Oleksiejczuk to defeat Ovince St. Preux by TKO. Remaining in the UFC's light heavyweight division, we have a pair of very big hitters as the Hulk from Moldova, Ion Cutelaba, 14-3-0 with 1 no contest, takes on Khalil Rountree Jr., the current record of 8 wins, 3 losses, and 1 no contest. Now, this is 2 very dangerous action fighters. Cutelaba is coming off a loss to Glover Teixeira. I had Cutelaba in that fight. He got off to a good start, but faded and was finished. He had one back-to-back in 3 of 4, so this is kind of a big fight for him to get back on track. For Rountree, he won a dominant decision over Eric Anders, his best prolonged performance we've seen in a long time. He had a brutal knockout loss to Johnny Walker when Johnny Walker was a nobody. I had Johnny Walker to take him out in that fight. He has won 4 of 6 with a no contest loss mixed in the middle to the aforementioned Michal Oleksiejczuk. Both men are 6'1", 1 inch reach advantage for Rountree. Cutelaba is the younger fighter by 3 years. Now let's look at it. Both guys have power, no denying that. Rountree 5 of 8 wins by knockout, 3 of 4 in the UFC. For Cutelaba, 11 of 14 wins by knockout. 2 of his 3 UFC victories have also been by TKO or KO. Now Rountree's been KO'd once, and Cutelaba has never been stopped. Both guys are very durable. Again, Walker had to land some massive. It was a flying knee to put him down, just incredible. And he's knocking everybody else out, so it's really not too much of a knock on Khalil. Now, the cardio is a potential issue on both sides of things. Rountree is 3-2 in round 1 in his career, 1-2. In the UFC, 1-2 after round 1 in the UFC. He's known to slow down. For Cutelaba, he had 12 first-round finishes outside of the promotion, or overall, but most of them outside of the promotion. He is 1-3 outside of round 1 in the UFC. All of his regional fights were done in round 1, some very quickly. Again, he slowed down versus Glover and Jared Cannonier, a fight he was absolutely winning, and I had him against Cannonier, and that really pissed me off to see how effective he was early and then just disappeared as that fight advanced. Now, Rountree looked really good against Eric Anders in that last fight in rounds 2 and 3. Utilized a lot of leg kicks, just blasted his lower half, and I had Anders. Again, I was completely off base in that matchup. I seem like I'm struggling with these guys picking the way it's going. He hurt Anders on multiple occasions. He took his base away with those low kicks and just was blasting him. Every time he touched him, he hurt him, backed him up. It just seemed like it was not going to be Eric's night in that matchup. Now, for Cutelaba, he's still dangerous as the fight advances, but he's not nearly as sharp. He's not nearly as active. He's not nearly as quick. And in fact, he's more vulnerable to his opponent's offense, where if they can push like Glover did, they can take it over. Rountree has struggled with takedowns in his career, and they compromise his cardio, and he's lost fights as a result. And Ion has shown he can use his wrestling. He had 6 takedowns in that aforementioned Cannonier fight, but really nothing since. He's actually attempted 0 takedowns since the Cannonier fight. So he has a bit of a wrestling background, but it seems like that's an out-of-element type scenario for the way he fights mixed martial arts. And attempting them here could diminish his cardio, and we have seen Rountree with some pretty solid takedown defense against guys who aren't world beaters. His sprawl is good. He's pretty good with his footwork, and he can make you pay. I believe against Daniel Jolly, he sprawled out of a takedown attempt and blasted him with some shots and got him out of there. And if Cutelaba's cardio is not great, if he can't get Rountree out of there after the first round and Khalil can survive and get back to his feet, that could be massively problematic. for Ion. Rountree's the more capable striker here, more technical. He's more linear. He's got a little more pop as far as I'm concerned. I think Cutelaba's numbers have been padded by the fact he's facing on regionals, fighting on the regional scene against regional opposition who fold up when they take big shots. Low kicks for Rountree. Again, they looked incredibly sharp in his last fight. I think if he can work them in with solid punching combinations, he can just outclass Cutelaba start to finish here. The first round should be an absolute firefight. Look for Khalil again to be more functional, to stay vertical. That's key as well, but be more functional with his offense. His fight style will help him to stay fresh and active because I think he's going to get the fight standing. That's huge. Cutelaba won't be the same fighter in rounds 2 and 3. He'll be more susceptible to damage, and he won't be nearly as active offensively. Again, he's durable as fuck, and he'll take a beating, but I think we'll just see, similar to the Anders fight, we'll see Cutelaba defensively tired and backing up, taking damage, but just not throwing enough back. And my prediction is Khalil Rountree to defeat Ion Cutelaba by decision. Moving right along, we're in a fight that probably should be the co-main event, and at one time it was until we had a slight change. We're in the UFC's welterweight division. It's Gunnar Nelson fighting out of Iceland with a record of 17-4-1, takes on the 16-3-0 Brazilian Gilbert Darino Burns, who's stepping in on short notice for Thiago Alves. Alves pulled out. This is 2 weeks' notice for Burns. This is his second consecutive fight. It's a quick turnaround for Burns, but he actually took his last matchup against Oleksiejczuk on short notice. I had Kuchenko in there, and Burns put up a pretty solid performance. He has won 3 in a row and 5 of 6, and of course he's coming up to welterweight, which we'll talk about momentarily. For Nelson, he dropped a split decision against Leon Edwards, who appears to be on the cusp of title contention, or fighting for a title, actually. He dominated Alex Oliveira on the mat in his next fight. I guess the finishing sequence was dominant. It was a bit dicey early on. I had Oliveira in that fight, so again, I was wrong there as well. He lost by knockout to Santiago Ponzinibbio, a fight I did get correct. And it's worth noting, he started off 4-0 in the UFC and had a lot of accolades, and then he lost that Rick Story fight, and he's 4-4 since. So not exactly lighting the world on fire, but still an incredibly dangerous, capable fighter who could find a niche as a upper contender on the verge of doing something significant. Now, Nelson's 1 inch taller, he'll have a 1 inch reach advantage, and he's 2 years younger. Nelson is a blown up lightweight. I don't think he can make lightweight. I just feel like he's undersized at welterweight. Burns is a former lightweight coming up to welterweight where he feels it's just easier to make the fight because he doesn't have to make the cut, which I get that. It's completely understandable. So that's worth noting there. Is physically, I don't think Burns can be able to, that undersized, but at the same time, it's just one of those fights where you're like, is size going to play a factor at all? Now, these are 2 top-shelf grapplers with very capable striking attacks as well. Not one-dimensional fighters whatsoever. Looking at the ground numbers first, Nelson has taken down 10 of his 12 opponents. One of those 2 fights, he didn't take an opponent down. He knocked Brandon Thatch down and submitted him. So that's showing how good he is on the ground. He's also been taken down a couple of times. He was taken down twice by Leon Edwards. Damian Maia took him down twice. Story took him down once. He lost all 3 of those matchups. In fact, overall, he is 0-3 when he gives up a takedown. So that's an interesting stat there. He is 1-4 when either he gives up one or doesn't land one. So also very interesting. That one is that Brandon Thatch fight. For Burns, he has taken down 11 of his 12 opponents. He is 7-1 when he lands at least 2 takedowns, 7-0 when he lands at least 2 takedowns and gives up 1 or fewer. Conversely, he is 0-3 and he fails to win the takedown battle. He tied it against Makhmud back in the day, and Dan Hooker, and he lost it against Michael Preux 5-1 in a fight he lost badly. And that's very concerning. And you go all the way back. When he fought Alex Oliveira, he won the takedown battle and got the submission, but he was losing that fight, so that's worth noting as well. So those numbers, you almost think they favor Burns a little bit, suggesting he's the guy. If he can land a couple of takedowns, that puts Nelson at an adverse situation based on his track record. But again, it's not, will we get there? Burns has 8 wins by submission, 4 in the UFC. Nelson has 12 wins by submission, 7 in the UFC. Unless one of these 2 gasses out, the other one gets an advantageous position and they can't defend it because they're so tired, I don't anticipate a submission finish here. Again, I've been wrong all the time, so but that's what I'm seeing. Who wins the grappling battle? It's hard to say. Do we even get there? Could it be a sloppy kickboxing fight? I don't know. Not even sloppy, just not Adesanya versus Anderson Silva style. Burns seems like he's the more willing to spam takedowns. Nelson seems like more of an opportunistic grappler where he's going to look for that opportunity to get on top of you and just hold you down. Well, Burns will shoot one and say if he gets it, great. If he doesn't, I'll go for another one here. I feel like Burns could score some takedowns early and hold Nelson down in the first round, maybe similar to what Maia did or Edwards did. I think Nelson's more likely to capitalize on a slowdown of Burns and really put it on him there and make it more poignant once he gets him down in rounds 2 or 3. Who wins this matchup on the feet, which is very well where it could be decided. Nelson's a capable striker. He's got that unorthodox Kyokushin sideways stance, karate style. Not a high-volume striker. He looks for openings. He's very methodical, more technical than Burns, more sustainable than Burns, which is a key, and I'm going to keep coming back to that. Burns has legit finishing power. We've seen Nelson hurt some guys before, but Burns, I think, is the more big-time hitter. He knocked out a couple of UFC opponents. He showed he can combine takedowns and striking for a volume decision, or he can put you out if needed. Again, he's more aggressive than Nelson. He likes to push forward, which could win him points in a close fight. But again, can he sustain that approach? Especially with a short turnaround on 2 weeks' notice. Going to Europe. That's also massive. Nelson could look to counter and use Burns' aggression against him. Both have been knocked out by dangerous strikers, so both of them have their chins can be cracked. Burns has struggled at times when he's unable to overwhelm his opponent on the feet, and I think if we establish that he can't get Nelson down, or he can't get Nelson down and dominate him, I think that takes a little bit away of his striking confidence, and I think that's crucial. I feel like Gilbert Burns here can be the more effective striker early, just by being aggressive and a little bit wild, and I don't want to say sloppy, but just aggressive. It's a good way to put it. And he could land some takedowns in the first round and really have some success. But he did slow down his last fight against Kuchenko, and I felt that's what he was going to do earlier than the last round. I think that could open the door here for Gunnar Nelson. But I think the quick turnaround, that short notice, 2 weeks to get ready, and then heading all the way to Copenhagen, I think those are all major concerns here. Nelson's at home. He's from Iceland. He trains in Scotland, but he will be the hometown favorite. The European fight, the fans will be all over him, supporting him. It's a long travel factor for Gilbert Burns. Short notice again. I'm not sold on his winning against Kuchenko. I really thought he had a good chance to win that matchup, and I made a mistake of picking against him. But I don't think Kuchenko is the test that Gunnar Nelson is, because Gunnar Nelson has more layers to his game. Burns had success striking and was able to work his grappling, which then in turn made his striking more effective. He melded it together. I don't think he can do that here, and I don't think he can do it over 3 rounds. Nelson, I think, survives early and takes over once Burns slows down. He could get a positional-based finish, but my prediction is Gunnar Nelson to defeat Gilbert Burns by decision. In the co-main event of the evening, the Olympian Mark Madsen of Denmark, undefeated at 8-0, makes his UFC debut as he takes on Caterpillar Danilo Belluardo with a record of 12 wins and 4 losses, fighting from Italy. Now, again, we have an undefeated Danish wrestler, Olympic wrestler, 2016 silver medalist for Madsen, 2-0 in 2019. This is his UFC debut, so obviously he's from Denmark, fighting in Denmark. That's huge. For Belluardo, this is his sophomore appearance. He lost a debut to Joel Alvarez by second-round TKO back in June. He had won 6 in a row to get the call to the promotion. Belluardo 2 inches taller, and he's 10 years younger than Madsen. Now, Madsen's fighting at home. He spent his entire career fighting in Denmark. He's looking for a big win in a high-profile spot. It's a showcase fight for him. He's 35 years old, so he's definitely up there. Now, obviously, wrestling is at his base when you come from that high of a wrestling pedigree. Solid double leg, good top control. He lands strikes. He's just very good at holding opponents down. He's got a trio submission win, so it's not like that's out of the question here. All of them by choke, which isn't shocking. He's willing to step forward and throw strikes. I think the threat of his wrestling makes his opponents apprehensive to step into the pocket and really commit themselves. He began his career with 4 first-round finishes, again, probably facing low-level opposition. He's coming off his 5th first-round finish, but he had a trio of 3-round decisions prior to that, which tells us he can go deep. He's not a gas bag, and usually wrestlers aren't. Now, Belluardo, he's finished 9 of 12 opponents, 6 by knockout. He landed a pair of takedowns versus Joel Alvarez, showed good top control, but it was against an opponent who wanted to be on his back and was willing to work, or wanted to be on the mat and willing to work off his back. He landed some solid elbows, was holding top position, doing some nice damage. But, he was advancing position, and then he got swept. He lost position. He got put in a bad spot, smashed with some elbows by Alvarez, and finished. And now he's been knocked out 4 times, which is a concern, especially if Madsen can get a dominant position on him. Even though Madsen is kind of known for being just kind of a grinder that outpositions you and takes decisions at times against next-level opposition, you have to wonder if he can start landing some shots. Can he get Danilo out of there? Belluardo will keep, he needs to keep this fight standing, which is against his MO. He wants this fight in the ground, and he's going to struggle to get it to the ground, and he's going to struggle to keep it standing in a positive light. This seems like the type of fight that UFC is setting up to get a local fighter a win and kind of high-profile opportunity to bring the crowd in. Madsen's going to drag him down. He's going to grind, and he's eventually get to a position where he can get a submission or a TKO, and my prediction is Mark Madsen to defeat Danilo Belluardo by TKO. And finally, we are in the main event of the evening in the UFC's middleweight division as Jack the Joker Hermansson fighting out of Sweden, I believe initially born in Norway. I could have those reversed. Ranked 5th in the division, 19-4-0, takes on the 9th ranked Killa Gorilla Jared Cannonier with a current record of 11 wins and 4 losses. Now Hermansson is building a case for a title shot in a division that is quickly losing the old guard. He has 4 wins in a row. He is 7-2 in the UFC, including an upset over Jacare Souza. He stopped the David Branch, recently released, and Gerald Meerschaert as well. He's putting together a solid run. For Cannonier, he is another new face in a division looking to make a run. 2-0 at middleweight. Stopped David Branch in comeback fashion. TKO'd Anderson Silva with a leg kick, and he is making some noise. For Hermansson, 2 inches taller, same 77-inch reach. Hermansson is the younger man by 4 years. And, of course, it's crazy and always needs to be mentioned. Cannonier debuted at heavyweight, went to light heavyweight. Now he's at middleweight. It appears this is his final stop as far as weights are concerned. Very impressive he's been able to do what he's done and come down in weight and be competitive. So Cannonier, again, he's fought twice at middleweight, and his power has carried very well. It's carried the day in both matchups. Versus Branch, he lost the first round, survived, and finished a very tired opponent with strikes in round 2. That hurt. I had Branch in that matchup, and it really hurt. Versus Anderson Silva, he landed some solid strikes, very powerful. Eventually put him down with a leg kick, brutalizing Anderson Silva's legs and putting him down for the TKO. So very solid. He has, again, his powers translated exceptionally well at 185 pounds. He did have a knockout at heavyweight and at light heavyweight. 7 wins by knockout overall. He's also been knocked out twice. For Hermansson, he's been knocked out once by Thiago Silva, who just fought for the light heavyweight title back in 2017. He has a tendency to shell up, and that's what cost him here. He shells up under fire, covers up, tries to wait his opponent out. And Santos, not Thiago Silva, Thiago Santos. Thiago Santos was able to wait him out and just wail on him, and eventually Hermansson had to go down. That would be a mistake against Jared Cannonier, who has the type of power that if he can throw around your guard, he could put you down if you allow him the opportunity. Now, for Hermansson, his success has been the strength of a surprising takedown-based attack. It couples it together with violent ground and pound and very good submissions. He is 7-0 in fights where he lands at least 1 takedown. He had 3 against Jacare in a big upset, 1 against David Branch, which led to the submission, 1 against Gerald Meerschaert, which led to his submission. He has some multiple massive ground and pound finishes as well. He's just been very impressive for a guy coming out of Europe who many didn't expect to be. I expected him to be a movement striking-based fighter, and he's really diversified his game effectively. He's had surprising success against capable ground fighters. Jacare, Branch, Meerschaert, Talis, Leitis, all very good on the ground. He gutted out that fight against Leitis in that matchup with an injury and eventually finished Leitis. Just damn impressive. If he gets your back, he's got just unreal back. He's an unreal threat from back mount. Brutal ground and pound for the finish to set up a submission, or he can set up a submission, and shut you down. And Cannonier's takedown defense has been a bit of a question mark. He gave up 3 against Branch in 1 round, 4 against Jan Blachowicz in a fight he got upset at light heavyweight, 3 against Glover Teixeira in a fight he lost, 6 against the aforementioned Alen Cutelaba, which he was able to win because Cutelaba just gassed out and didn't know what to do with himself. But the trend is there. Now, Cannonier has never been submitted. He has a background in jiu-jitsu, but it's rarely been a positive for him. It's rarely been something he's been able to capitalize on. We also have to consider the volume striking of Hermansson. He uses a lot of movement, put up good numbers, and if Cannonier's kind of linear and trying to chase him down and slug it out, we're going to see Hermansson making him turn a lot and swing and miss, and eventually it'll set up Cannonier to slow down and eventually allow Hermansson to either get in on takedowns or just keep pushing that volume. Cannonier's never really showcased high-volume offensive attacks. He's not a guy that's going to outwork opponents for a prolonged period of time. He's eventually going to look to put you down. The travel factor is a massive concern here for Cannonier. He's entering enemy territory again. Pardon me. Like Gunnar Nelson, Hermansson's going to be the type of guy who will have the home crowd in his favor because he's a local fighter. He's from Sweden and fighting out of Norway, so again, he will be the favorite in Denmark. Cannonier's issues with getting taken down are massive, and Hermansson's a finisher that has taken out better opponents on the mat. And he's not the type of guy that if you survive the first round, he's going to fade. He's going to come back and do more of the same, and it's Cannonier who'll be the one fading. If Cannonier lands that big shot, it could change the complexion of this fight. But again, Hermansson's focus on scoring takedowns and Cannonier's noteworthy vulnerability are too much to overlook in this matchup, no matter which way you slice it. Hermansson could do it early and break him down, or he could do it later. Either way, my prediction is Jack Hermansson. I almost called him Jared Hermansson. Jack Hermansson to defeat Jared Cannonier by TKO. So those are my 6 main card predictions for UFC Fight Night 160. All of my preliminary picks will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net, so please check them out. My bet packs, which have been rolling back-to-back big shows, I'll be posting them as well. And just quickly looking at the odds, there's some very interesting odds on this card like we've seen recently that are very playable, and we'll see what we can come up with. Other than that, I appreciate it when you guys tune in, leave comments. Again, I'm still gunning for that 100 likes on a video. My video totals are getting solid. We'll see if we can keep putting those up. But either way, thank you very much for tuning in, guys, listening, commenting, all those things. Subscribe to me on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter at KO_predictions. And again, talk to you soon, guys. We are still rolling through a very long and drawn-out schedule. Big pay-per-view coming up next on October 5th, Whitaker versus Adesanya. I look forward to that, UFC 243. But for now, take care, guys. I'll talk to you soon. Hi.